Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 71st episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Becoming an Influencer. Today, I will be interviewing Becky Rashidi. Becky has a Master of Science in Clinical Nutrition from Columbia University and is currently completing her dietetic internship through Larkin Community Hospital. I've had the privilege to serve as preceptor for Becky in her dietetic internship. She has about 4 months left in her internship, and I know that she is going to be a phenomenal dietitian. In addition to being a dietetic student, Becky is active on social media as an IBS nutritionist. Becky combines her personal experience with IBS and passion for nutrition to help those struggling. Well, welcome, Becky. Would you like to share a few words before we get started?
Sure. Thank you so much, Katie, for having me on this podcast. I would say, shared my background really, really nicely, but I'm just ready to dive in and talk all about social media and just how impactful and powerful it can be for dietitians and get into the nitty-gritty details of that.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you here. So as we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to become a dietitian?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey, it took some twists and turns to get here, but just a little background, I'm 32 years old. So this is a second career for me. But let's go all the way back to when I was 15 years old. In 2005, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. Back in 2005, there really was not a lot of information on celiac disease, gluten. There were not products nearby me. My mom had to drive an hour to one health food store to find gluten-free foods. Mm-hmm. I went to college and I wasn't really sure what I was interested in. So I chose a degree in business marketing from Indiana University, graduated in 2012. And worked in corporate America for 5 years. I did some consulting, market research, and then I was a fashion buyer at Bloomingdale's for 3 years, which I thought was actually my original passion. I get to kind of use that now on social media. But through this whole journey, my celiac was under control, but I had really developed pretty chronic irritable bowel syndrome starting in college. So over 10 years ago. And, celiac disease to me was pretty straightforward, gluten-free diet, no cross-contamination, but IBS was really so nuanced. There was a lot of opinions on it. And I really went through actually about 30 different practitioners before I found real sustainable help. And through that journey, really decided that because it had such a negative impact on my life, irritable bowel syndrome, I decided that all I cared about was making sure that my experience didn't happen to other people. So I said, what's the best way to do that? And decided I wanted to go down the dietetics pathway. So I redid half of my college, because business wasn't really applicable, and found myself at Columbia, had an absolutely wonderful, enriching experience. And through that, I also was a social media consumer. I loved creating images. Back to my fashion background, I love images, I love design, and decided I really wanted to share personal story and actual tangible, helpful tips on irritable bowel syndrome to a social media audience. And that brings me today to where I'm at today on social media.
Awesome. That's really wonderful. And I don't think I had quite put together that your undergrad degree was in business marketing. And I think of the direction that you could go in your career and like how valuable that actually is to you. Because sometimes we think like, oh, business and dietetics don't go together, but oh my gosh, they totally can. So
yes, I was, it all worked out because I chose that degree, and it really, I think having, being interested in marketing, especially for an online dietitian, I think is a really useful combination.
Yes, absolutely. So can you share more about the social media presence that you built on Instagram and TikTok? What do you do? How did you get started? And how did you actually grow your traffic?
Sure. Yeah. So I jumped on Instagram about 4 years ago for my, business page. Again, I was really drawn to both the visual aspect of Instagram and also the storytelling. I also happen to be an introvert. And so I think for me, communicating behind a screen was a little bit easier for me than communicating in person. So I think I really learned to hone in on my voice through social media. And I had, I grew my presence, I would say, from up until last year, 0 to 6,000. TikTok has changed that from to 10,000 now. But then I think the more interesting part was I jumped on TikTok in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. And I think everyone was downloading TikTok at that time, or it felt like everyone was. And this part's really important. I remember, talking to some people and they said, so-and-so is only big on Instagram because she started her Instagram account in 2015. And I think that really resonated with me. Every 10 years, I think social media platforms change over. And I think Instagram was starting to feel a little fake and phony. And I think people were really looking for a new platform to express themselves. And TikTok, a lot of platforms come and go, but I had this like deep intuitive sense that TikTok was refreshing. It was going to be a new big platform. So March 2020, I said to myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn this platform. When you jump on at first, I think you get the wrong impression of TikTok. It feels like a lot of 18-year-olds dancing. But when the longer you spend on it, you're like, there are people of all ages. You can be on, dog TikTok, a sewing TikTok, basketball TikTok. There is something for everyone. My dad, who's 65 years old, is on TikTok. He likes to learn about history. So there's really something for everyone. So from March to about July of 2020, all I did was really try to learn and understand the platform. And it started to make sense to me a little bit. And I had posted, 20 videos at that point, and they were all duds, which is a very important part of the journey. I can circle back to that. But my pivotal moment for me was July 2020. And I had decided to embrace what TikTok was all about. It's a very, very simple platform. So it's not where you're going to go into a 5-minute story about mitochondria. It was as simple as a 15-second video of me pointing to different words. And those words were different foods that would help constipation. And I was like, God, this is so dumb and so simple. Like, I want to go into the soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. And what you have to understand about TikTok is you really need to keep it as simple as possible, one short message. And I was like, this is the dumbest video I've ever made. And the next day I woke up and I had 20,000 views on it. And I was like, wow. And I'd gained a bunch of followers. So I just started to make as simple videos, entertainment, emotional. We can get into kind of the pillars of TikTok. And now through that process, really committing to it, I saw, within the first month, I got 10,000 followers just from committing to it. And now I'm at about almost 2 years into my journey, and I have 175,000 followers. We can talk about kind of how to get there if that's something that interests you, but that was sort of the beginning of my TikTok journey.
Awesome. And I would love to dive a little bit more into that. That I myself, even I'm like, oh, I want to know about the pillars of TikTok and how to grow. Because, I think in addition to your 175,000 followers, you have 2 million likes, which is crazy. That's a lot of humans viewing your content and learning about this important stuff. So yes, tell us more about these pillars of TikTok and how to grow.
Yes. It's interesting to think about, like 2 million. So I think first off, I think we all get stuck in this. Like I said before, everyone can be a TikToker. But first, there's a science and an art to TikTok. So first is the science of TikTok is that this is not the place to do long form content. This is why I decided to start a podcast, because TikTok is really all about telling a fact, a story in about 15 to 30 seconds. And you'll be like, why is that even useful? But I actually think it really helps as a writer or as a marketer really distill your messages down into bite-sized pieces of information. So customers, they get bored within a second. Like you really need to hone in on your message in about 15 to 30 seconds. They're looking for authenticity on TikTok. So whereas Instagram has become more glass half full, polished, you gotta, some people like to do their makeup, or, it has to be more pristine and planned. TikTok is actually the total opposite. So if on TikTok, they notice some phoniness in you or some fakeness or some planned element, people will scroll. So it's as simple as, you pull up your phone, you tell a quick story, and then you post it. Or if you dance in the moment. It's not about perfecting the dance move. They love authenticity. And that can be really hard when you want to plan perfect content, but they like the authenticity. Then also controversy and polarization is huge on TikTok. So if you kind of make a TikTok saying it's good to drink water, no one's really going to care. They do like polarization and controversy. So that can be, as tough, especially as a dietitian. We want to talk about the nuances and all of that. But I would say in the controversy or polarization, it's really about who are you as a person and your brand and sticking to that message. Some people are really not going to like it. Some people will, but that actually does help start a conversation. And that's what TikTok is all about. Really honing in on a hook, a fact, and a call to action. People love images to look at. You take Canva and you record a Canva image in the background. They love seeing pictures of food or pictures of diet, stats from a dietitian. Quick facts, and you do need to have a higher quality phone, so nothing too grainy. But then the art of TikTok, I had said this sort of, the authenticity, and then really understanding your niche. There are a bunch of dietitians on TikTok, but it's really about, I think there's that wonderful word from the Japanese. It's called like ikagi or something. What are your passions? What does the world need? What skill sets do you have? And so I try my best to be, talk about this horribly embarrassing thing called irritable bowel syndrome and combine it with, I'm just a normal girl who likes the same things you like, but I also have IBS. So make it relatable. And I do like fashion and design, and I like to interweave that into my posts. So if you're a dietitian listening and you're a dietitian who likes basketball and you work with diabetic people, like interweave all of those things together. So it's really about honing in on who you are and being really, really true and authentic to that. And the last thing I'll say is posting quantity. It's really about just producing as much content as possible. So they say on YouTube, like, don't even worry about your first video, post 100 videos on YouTube and then reassess, because when you post 100 videos, you will learn so much by doing. And it's the same thing with TikTok. You can't really learn a book about how to do TikTok. You really have to, at least in the beginner to intermediate stage, you really need to just put out a bunch of content and learn through doing. So that would be sort of some ground rules of how to start.
Awesome. So many good tips there. And thank you so much for sharing. I think my biggest takeaways with everything you shared was, well, first off, short, be authentic, be you, but we learn by doing. I think sometimes as dietitians and RDs to be, we get so stuck in perfectionism. And it seems like TikTok's actually a great platform to help you overcome perfectionism and just, get out there, do it, post the things, don't get in your head. And it really is all about helping people. And I think that's a disconnect that some people have when they look at TikTok, that, and even like the controversy piece. I'm glad you brought that up, because so many people are like, I don't want to be controversial. There's too much controversial stuff. I want to do X, Y, and Z. But we also want to meet people where they're at. We want to help people. We want to make an impact. And this is a way that you can make massive impact. So awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I do remember, we had been working together for a couple weeks before I even found out that you were on social media. And I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, what's your handle on Instagram and TikTok? And I noticed when I was asking you this, and I hope you're okay with me sharing this on the podcast, because I do think it's so important for dietitians and students listening. But I remember you seemed a little bit embarrassed to share your social media handles. So maybe you could share a little bit more about how you're feeling when the topic of social media came up.
Yeah. And you know what, I found that moment to be really pivotal in my own professional journey, which I'll explain. But I'd say before our conversation, yeah, it's something that I hid from everyone. And I think it's a lot of limiting beliefs I had. So any new person I met, it didn't matter if they were in the nutrition field or not. I would never talk about TikTok. I would never talk about being a creator, or as we've talked about now, being an influencer. I think that there was a few things stopping me. One is, we go through school, or I went through school, and it's very much geared towards a few professions. So, hey, you're going to work in a hospital setting, or you're going to work in a community setting. And I think the talk around dietitians in the online space is relatively new. Yes. And sometimes I feel, when I'm really, really into something, I'm careful to share it with certain people, because I think it's not necessarily the status quo yet to be a dietitian on these platforms. And sometimes, yeah, it's like I like to protect myself. But however, when I don't share, is I miss out on wonderful conversations with people, or being really proud of what I'm doing, or someone being like, wow, that's great. You inspired me to create a TikTok, which is, what I love to tell people to do. So by holding that in and being afraid of being different, I missed out on a lot of positive opportunities. So, personal and professional. So since we've now talked, our conversation, I've been really vocal about telling people like, yeah, I'm a content creator, or I'm an influencer, which has been really so relieving to have you, what is the word? Say, hey, this is real, legitimate, and having a supporter, I think, would be the word. So yeah, that's what was going on for me personally.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's important for people to hear, because I think a lot of people feel that. They feel that if they have a presence online, if they're even like, if they have a side hustle, they feel like, oh my gosh, this is outside the box. It can bring up all this feeling. So thank you for sharing that. And I hope people who are listening, who maybe are like, oh man, I feel that way too, I hope that they're willing to embrace that, you know what? The world is changing, and it is okay to do what you love to do and to talk about it. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit more before we get to our next question. And I might be stepping on a soapbox a little bit, but I really want to normalize dietitians and RDs to be taking over and rocking the online space like Becky has. The reality, guys, the world is changing. How we communicate and reach people is changing, and we have the ability to reach and impact people in amazing ways through social media. Right now, there are so many influencers online with massive social followings who are working in our space, food nutrition, right? They are spreading incorrect nutrition information, and in some cases, potentially causing risk to the public. And you guys, here's the kicker. These people are making a lot of money. So here is what I want. I want to see more dietitians becoming influencers themselves. An influencer is someone who has a large following online. This can be on social media like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. It can also be through a blog or a podcast, or probably a combination of things. So influencers do just that. They influence the public. The reality is that people listen to influencers. Influencers have the know, like, and trust factor. And if we think about it, in the past, most influencers were people like celebrities or athletes, people we saw on TV, on the big screen. But with social media, anyone can become an influencer. So influencers make money in multiple ways. One way would be to partner with a brand or company. Another way is to sell products or services. And really the best way is to make money through multiple streams of income, which you could do if you are an influencer. So here's the deal. Whenever I list side hustle opportunities for dietitians, I always mention becoming an influencer. This side hustle is not for everyone, but it is for some of you listening. I do know this. So I don't want dietitians or RDs to feel embarrassed about taking over the online space. I want them to feel empowered. The game has changed. People are now going to social media for their health information. And think of social media like public health. We have the ability to reach massive audiences and help people in big ways. And by spreading correct nutrition information, we are helping our dietitian peers in the clinics who spend way too much time wading through all that incorrect information when their patients come in, right? So having dietitians become influencers is a win-win-win. A win for the public, a win for the profession, and a win for the dietitian who is building a legitimate business online. Did you hear me say legitimate? I really mean this. I don't want anyone to be embarrassed about the thought of becoming an influencer. Again, this is a space that is not for everyone, but if it's something that like piques your interest and you're like, ooh, I want to do this, then you need to go for it. Okay, so I'm going to step off my soapbox, but I really think this is an important conversation. So Becky, going back to my questions for you, when I first saw your social media following, the first thing I thought was, wow, Becky is an influencer. So my question, have you ever thought of yourself as an influencer?
Not before we spoke. No, I thought of myself as just, a dietetic intern who is posting videos for people to consume. And I think after our conversation, I think my mindset changed. And I think it's because we think of a typical influencer, maybe it's kind of like the 2016 Instagram phase of people promoting products, and there's not that transparency or that legitimacy, but that's not necessarily true. It's just someone who, has domain authority and they connect with their audience. And so now, yes, I do consider myself one after our conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. So prior to our internship rotation, had you ever thought about building a business surrounding your social media following? And if so, how do you think that this could potentially work?
So yes and no. I would say yes, in that I had always wanted to build an online space. I had no idea what it looked like at the time, but I felt and knew that the beautiful thing about having an online community is that there's massive leverage. So, you create something once and it's not just seen by one person. Like if you were to do a one-on-one consult with someone, but if you create something on the internet, it is so scalable. And so I had always been fascinated with the concept of scalable information. And as I learned more, it's kind of like I love the online courses. I'm a big consumer of online courses myself. I love to learn and digital goods, stuff like that. But the piece that I really never thought about was working with brands. And it I think the hesitation with working with brands was, I think you just have to be comfortable, similar to anything in life. You need to be comfortable with the dynamic of saying, this is my rate, and in exchange, I will produce content for you, and being comfortable to that. So now I am opening myself up to that arena. So working with brands that I would naturally already work with and building a whole lifestyle around it. Actually, something I'm fascinated with is not only just saying, hey, this is a gluten-free, IBS-friendly almond milk I love, but actually going into other areas of my life. So if I love a certain sweatshirt, if I go to a restaurant and they make me an IBS-friendly meal, kind of the sky is the limit with the internet and how you can educate people in creative ways. So that is now where my mind has gone in terms of branding and partnerships. That's what I'm thinking of now.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that, because there's so many opportunities and so many things that we can do as dietitians that are outside of the box and unconventional. It is just as legitimate as a dietitian going into a hospital and being a clinical dietitian. You can be a dietitian online. So again, something that I'm excited you're pursuing, and I really appreciate you having this conversation with me. So, so I want to dive a little bit more into brands, because we had chatted a little bit in the past about your Instagram, and you had shared that you had done some like minor work with a couple of brands. I think that there were 2 brands, but it was in exchange for product. And we had some conversations about this, but I think it is worth bringing up on the podcast. So there are many dietitians and RDs to be who work with brands in exchange for products, or air quotes exposure, but not for money. But here's the deal. Brands have marketing and advertising budgets. And if you have a massive following, then they want to get in front of those people, especially because you have the know, like, trust factor. So when we are working for free products, that is not win-win. It's a huge win for the brand, like a huge win, because they're getting in front of all these eyeballs of trusting people, but it's not a win for us. So since working together, we've talked a lot about how you could build a legitimate business around being an influencer online. And I know since you have taken a dietitian, her name is Abby Sharp. So you've taken Abby Sharp's Working with Brands Media Mastermind e-course, and you've learned more about working with brands and what that could look like. So can you share with the audience some of what you've learned, and even like, what are your plans now for your future as a dietitian, and how your mindset has changed, like all of those things?
Oh yeah, whatever I was doing before was completely wrong. So it was a fabulous course that I took that you suggested, and it was, yeah, so awesome, so valuable. So a number of things have changed. I would say one is my boundaries. So before it was like, sure, you can send me product and I'll take a picture of it. And oh, sure, I'll put this link in my bio to your website for a whole year to promote your things. And I thought it was sort of, in my mind, how do I explain it? Like, oh, maybe this will help develop a relationship. But when you really look at it, it was actually a very one-sided relationship. It was positive for them, but not necessarily did anything for me. So the second thing I really learned was building out a rate card. Not only just saying, hey, I'll produce one piece of content, but how about I produce 3 pieces of content for you at a 20% discount? So to entice people to do more package deals. So that was fascinating. And having limits and boundaries around that content or that deal and being okay with it. The third was just the vast amount of opportunities I wasn't even thinking about. So Abby really in her course shares, you can do blogs, hands and pans, TV, Instagram stories. Just, I had never thought about the possibilities of media in general. So that's kind of where, I love restaurants, I love travel. And a goal of mine would be, why don't I work with some restaurants on IBS friendly options for people? Your mind starts to build on how you can work with brands in that way. So just the possibilities opened up for me. And then the next was I developed this media kit, which I had never had. And I love it. I'm proud of it, in a rate card. And a lot of people have emailed me saying, hey, in exchange for product, I'll send you this. And I was like, I'd love to work with you. And then I start the conversation about my price, and that's been really interesting. Like, people say, okay, well, not this month, but next month, perhaps we can look into it, or let me get back to you. But it feels like I'm really respecting myself. It feels more like a two-way street. And what was the last thing I was going to say? Where was I going with this? Sometimes these pieces of content could take a whole day to create, or half a day. So you're also respecting your time. And I lost my train of thought. I had something else to say, but that's kind of where I have moved right now. And it's definitely a very legitimate revenue stream. The last thing I was going to say is rejection is actually not that scary. I think we build up in our mind, we're going to email them our price and they're going to tell us how horrible we are, or why would you charge that much, even though it's a rate that is well researched and it is, not something totally crazy. But when you get a rejection email saying, hey, not this time, it's really not a big deal. I think in our heads, it hurts way more than in email. So I think practice makes perfect with that. So that's something I've learned as well.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Rejection is not that scary. I think one of the things that will benefit almost every dietitian listening to the podcast is hearing no more often, and being okay with no, recognizing that all of those no's will lead to the right yes. So yes, rejection is not that scary, and embrace it, because we're only rejected because we're out there trying. And it's not really like a rejection. It's just not right now.
Not
oftentimes
today, right.
Yeah. And I love that you're having these conversations, because a lot of it is going to be not right now, because they'll come back later and be like, oh, wait a minute here. And, yeah, That is awesome. I'm so excited to see how your brand online continues to grow and to see the work you continue to do. So, what would you say to dietitians or RDs to be who want to become influencers, but they're worried about what other people might think?
Oh, great question. So I have a few tips, and this may or may not work depending on the type of person you are. But the first tip I have, I actually kept my TikTok secret for 6 months. The first 6 months, I was really working on it. And the reason I kept it secret, I mean, maybe people found me, but I wanted it to be like a creative, safe space for me. So I think if you're someone who loves the idea of a TikTok or an Instagram or a blog, whatever, sometimes creating this personal bubble at first to get your feet on the ground and to really get your creative juices out, to do weird things, wacky things, try things out, I do really think is important for the right person. So I did that with both my Instagram and my TikTok. And then when my TikTok had gotten somewhat, had gotten some legitimacy, I started opening up to the right people about it. Now I'm obviously more comfortable with it. So that would be one tip. The second tip is understanding that these platforms, there's two sides to these platforms. So one of it is that you are there to serve. So you are there to provide information that is valuable to other people. And you need to create content that is valuable to other people, which means you might have to create content that you're not necessarily interested in, or not that way, but you might want to be posting personal photos and personal diaries and stuff like that benefits you, but you really have to think about your customer, what they would want. However, it is important to both satisfy yourself and satisfy your customer in the process, because I think it makes it fun, enjoyable, creative, and you're producing value. So it's a delicate balance there. The third thing is you have to post quantity. So if you post once and then you wait a whole month to post on TikTok again, you're never going to see any growth. It truly is a big thing. And I grew my Instagram account. I almost doubled my Instagram this year based on this method. I committed on Instagram to posting 5 times a week. Sometimes I'm a little iffy about what I'm about to post, not so confident, a little scared. And you have to do it because people need consistency. The algorithm needs consistency. And that's how people get to know you, is through reading your posts. So it's a numbers game. And I would say really focusing on a few key pillars. So one is people love storytelling. They love to relate to you as a human being. They love, value adds. So 10 best foods for IBS-C, right? They love a pain point. So, for example, sharing a personal story and connecting it to your audience. And then they do love an element of aspirational content. So I used to suffer from painful belly bloat, and now I'm here. People like something to look up to. So focusing on those sort of key pillars: pain points, value add, relatable storytelling, and aspirational content. And just know that you will look back. I look back on my content from a year ago and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, I'm a little embarrassed looking at it. And that's actually part of the creative process, as you evolve and you tweak and you refine. So you're not going to get it perfect right off the bat, and you have to be totally okay with that.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I really do believe that. It's like we have to get started, because that, when we think of perfectionism, people think I have to get all my ducks in a row before I could post something. It has to be perfect, but that's not how it works. How we develop mastery is by doing the thing over and over and over again, and we get better by doing. So that is really wonderful advice, because, I know for me, especially this podcast, I do share often, this is my practice of imperfection. I don't do multiple takes. I don't do extensive editing. The only times I edit, if I say something wrong, like sometimes I say the wrong year. Yesterday, I said like next year's 2020. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I say things wrong. So sometimes I will edit that. But for me, this podcast was a practice in imperfection, because I knew, I'm like, one day I want to look back at episode 1 and be like, oh my gosh, because then you see how far you have come. So I love that advice. It's get out there, do it, have these practical tips that Becky shared. And Yeah, this has been so fun, Becky. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this advice on, growing your social media following, being an influencer online, mindset, and how it is okay if we want to be an influencer online. It is a legitimate business for those who it is the right fit for and if they want to do it. So I so appreciate you coming on today. So where can people find you online if they want to see more of what you're doing and they want to follow you?
Sure. So I have my TikTok and my Instagram is the same. It's at Becky Rashidi Fard. And then I have a new podcast out, only a few episodes out, and it is called Luxury IBS. So you can find that on Apple or Spotify. And then my website is also beckyrashidifard.com. So all the same stuff.
Awesome. And I will include it in the show notes.
Great.
So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Becky.
This is so fun. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the podcast episode. Wasn't Becky the best? Well, I wanted to let you guys be the first to know that I'm going to be relaunching my Blogging Accelerator program real soon. The 7th cohort of the Blogging Accelerator program is starting on February 1st, 2022. But here's the deal, guys. After this launch, I am closing the doors to my program. I've never closed the doors before. I don't exactly know how long the doors will be closed at this point, but what I'm going to be doing is revamping the Blogging Accelerator program. It's going to come back bigger and better than ever. But everyone who joins the 7th cohort and everyone who's already a part of the program is going to have lifetime access, meaning when my revamped program comes to life, they're all going to have access too. So if you've been thinking about joining the Blogging Accelerator program, creating a blog that's going to build, multiple streams of passive income, bring in lots of people over time, then there is no better time to join than now. Head on over to bloggingacceleratorprogram.com to learn more about the program, or you can reach out to me and I'm always happy to hop on a call to see, is this program the best fit for you? So I cannot wait for our 7th cohort of the Blogging Accelerator program, creating more dietitian bloggers who are taking over the internet and building up their presence online so they can make multiple streams of passive income. If you are interested, I would love to have you in the program. Have an awesome day, guys.